or sitting in a perfectly quiet room. There is no radio playing, no television buzzing, and no one else is speaking. Yet, inside your mind, a song is blasting at full volume. It is a track you might not even like, repeating the exact same four-bar melody over and over again. You try to think of something else, but the music forces its way back to the front of your thoughts. Your own brain has hijacked your consciousness, and you did not give it permission. If you enjoy learning how your body, mind, and the world really work, subscribe now, because this channel breaks down complex things in simple ways. This internal hijacking happens to nearly 98% of the population. It feels like a minor annoyance, a harmless glitch in our biology, but the truth is much deeper. This involuntary musical imagery is actually a window into a massive hidden war currently raging inside your subconscious mind. Scientists call this phenomenon an earworm. The technical term is involuntary musical imagery, but the experience is universal. Most people assume that songs get stuck in our heads simply because they are catchy or because we heard them too many times. That is the common misconception. We think of our minds as a stereo system that we control, turning the volume up or down at will. But your brain is not a passive stereo. It is a highly aggressive prediction machine. It hates empty space, and it absolutely detests unfinished business. When an earworm strikes, it is not just a random memory playback. It is a specific type of cognitive loop. Your brain has stumbled upon a pattern it cannot seem to fully process, so it hits the repeat button in a desperate attempt to find a resolution. The first reason this happens comes down to the architecture of the music itself. But here is where it gets interesting. Not every song can become an earworm. The tracks that get trapped in your mind are mathematically engineered, either by chance or by design, to exploit a vulnerability in human hearing. They rely on a precise balance of predictability and surprise. If a melody is too simple, your brain gets bored and discards it. If it is too complex, your brain cannot map it. Earworms live in a sweet spot. They usually feature bright, fast tempos and an unusual melodic shape. Think of a melody that climbs up in pitch and then drops down unexpectedly. A famous study analyzing thousands of songs found that earworms almost always follow this specific roller coaster pattern. When you expose your brain to this exact musical trajectory, it acts like a digital virus, slipping past your mental defenses because the structure is just weird enough to demand attention, but easy enough to mimic. But the structure of the song is only half the story. The environment around you plays an even bigger role in triggering the music. You might think a song pops up out of nowhere, but your subconscious is constantly scanning your surroundings for anchors. A specific emotion, a word someone just said, or even a particular visual cue can instantly awaken a sleeping melody. In one documented case, a man had a specific pop song stuck in his head every single time he felt slightly anxious about a deadline. He had not heard the song in years. His brain had simply paired the frantic rhythm of the music with the physical feeling of stress. When you ignore these triggers, you lose track of what is actually thoughts. You become a passenger to your own environment, reacting to hidden cues that dictate your internal soundtrack without your conscious awareness. And this is where most people get it wrong. They assume that if they just try hard enough, they can force the song to stop. They treat the earworm like an intruder they can push out through sheer willpower. But psychology teaches us that the mind does not work that way. The moment you actively try to suppress a thought, your brain has to constantly check in to see if you are still thinking about it. This creates an ironic processing loop. By trying to kill the song, you are actually feeding it the exact energy it needs to survive. You are shining a massive spotlight on the very pattern you want to erase. But that is only half the story. Around the middle of the day, when you are deeply focused on a difficult task, the music often vanishes. Then, the moment you pause to make a cup of coffee or stare out the window, it roars back to life. This reveals a highly unexpected truth about the human mind. Earworms are not just random annoyances. They are symptoms of an underloaded cognitive system. When your conscious brain idles, your default mode network takes over. This is the region of the brain responsible for daydreaming, memory retrieval, and self-reflection. When this network is left unsupervised, It looks for entertainment. If it cannot find a complex problem to solve, it grabs the nearest piece of high-energy data available. Often, that data is a song fragment. The music acts as a filler, a cognitive pacifier designed to keep your brain stimulated when real life gets a little too quiet. To truly understand the deeper science, we have to look at how memory is physically stored in the human brain. Imagine your long-term memory as a massive library. Most memories are stored like books on a shelf. To access them, you have to consciously walk over, pull the book down, and open it. Music does not live in that library. Music is processed by multiple areas of the brain simultaneously. It triggers the auditory cortex, the motor cortex, the emotional centers, and the language regions all at once. Because it activates so many pathways, a song creates a deeply carved physical trench in your neural network. It is not stored as a static book. It is stored as a rolling ball. Once that ball gets pushed by a trigger, it keeps rolling down the neural trench, looping through your auditory cortex over and over again. This neural looping relies on a concept known as phonological loop processing. Think of this loop as a short-term tape recorder inside your working memory. It can hold about 2 to 3 seconds of auditory information. When you hear a catchy phrase or a punchy chorus, that tiny snippet gets trapped inside this short-term tape recorder. Because the snippet is short, it finishes playing almost immediately. But remember, the brain hates unfinished loops. It wants to hear the rest of the song, the resolution of the chord, the end of the musical thought. If your brain cannot remember the next part of the song, the tape recorder simply rewinds and starts the 2-second clip all over again. It becomes an infinite feedback loop, a literal short circuit in your working memory. If this loop goes on for too long without interruption, it begins to take a measurable toll on your mental bandwidth. While a brief earworm is harmless, a severe, persistent musical loop can degrade your cognitive performance. Because the phonological loop is occupied by the music, your ability to process verbal information drops. Reading comprehension slows down. Your internal monologue is forced to compete with the background noise, making it harder to articulate complex thoughts or make critical decisions. In extreme cases, people experience significant sleep disruption because their brains refuse to turn off the melody even in the dark. It turns a tool for human connection into a prison of repetitive sound, draining your mental battery when you need it most. This leaves us with a fascinating unanswered question about the evolutionary purpose of this glitch. Why would the human brain evolve a mechanism that allows itself to get stuck in an unproductive loop? Some evolutionary psychologists believe this is not a glitch at all, but an ancient survival mechanism. Before human beings invented writing, we used rhythm and rhyme to pass down critical information through generations. Stories, maps, and survival strategies were all set to music because the brain retains rhythmic structures with incredible fidelity. The earworm may very well be the remnant of an ancient archiving system. It is a biological drive to repeat vital information until it is permanently burned into our survival code. Today, we no longer need to remember the paths to clean water through song, but the ancient machinery remains. It sits inside our modern minds, waiting to be triggered by commercial jingles, pop tracks, and random environmental cues. The next time a melody traps your thoughts, remember that you are experiencing a deeply rooted piece of human history. Your brain is simply doing what it was designed to do for thousands of years. It is searching for order, clinging to a pattern, and refusing to let go of the rhythm. The music will eventually stop, but the complex machinery that brought it to life will continue running in the dark, waiting for the next trigger to press play.